I'm Art Stevens. I used to have a ministry of working with groups and people who had a lot of fear, a lot of anger, couldn't stand to be together. And I loved doing that ministry. It would usually be with a group for a weekend. That was a long time ago. I retired 15 years ago, and since then I've been doing work advocating for illegal immigrants and making some speeches. But this is the first time I've made a video. Why am I doing this at age almost 79? I'm starting a book and I'm starting this video series because I look around even before coronavirus, even before the uprising over Black Lives Matter right now. I looked around and I saw so much anger in our culture. And I started having dreams about that. I had a dream of a crossword puzzle. It wasn't a crossword puzzle. What's the other kind? Where you different pieces.
Oh, Scrabble?
No. Doesn't matter. Anyway.
Jigsaw puzzle?
Jigsaw puzzle. And the jigsaw puzzle had thousands of pieces, and it represented the entire world, countries in the world. And I was trying to put them together, and none of them wanted to fit next to each other. And that seemed to fit with what was going on in the culture of the United States politically at this time. So many people dislike the other, somebody who looks different from them or acts different from them. They don't want to be together. And my whole ministry was helping these people find out that, in fact, what could bring them together was what they most feared. Their fears, that they shared fears. People who didn't like each other, it was because they were afraid of each other, but if you could get them to talk to each other, they would find they had the same fears. So I had several dreams like this. I had another dream in which there was a whole community of people, and they spent every day trying to create something separately, everybody on their own, trying to outdo the other person. And they would bring them together at the end of the day. But there was no common sense of judgment. There was nobody to judge it. There were no criteria. So everybody was just competing meaninglessly. And at the end of the day, they would go home frustrated, angry, and wondering what they were going to do the next day. And it seems to me that also represents our culture today. So I had several dreams in which nobody was cooperating with anybody else and having no fun together. My ministry used to be called God's Play Ministry. I would leave these groups having fun together. And that's what I want to do now. I want to deal with the various issues that separate people now, help you find ways to come together so that you can honor each other, move out of your fear into hope. I found that most people don't know what a hope is. They think they do, but they really don't. Most people think a hope is an expectation, a should or an ought. Instead, it's something that brings abundance. So I want to move people out of their fear place into an abundance place and do it in a way that you do it together as a community, the people you're with, so that you can form cooperative community, enjoy doing it, and at the end, make creative decisions that are playful and that don't set you against each other, but bring you together in a sense of fun. So that's what this will all be about. And I'm doing it in two forms. One is a book. One is probably a set of videos. I will make mistakes along the way. Remember, my ministry is God's Play, so you're invited to laugh with me. And I will try to laugh at myself. I probably can't help it. And we'll see where we go with this. So how does that sound?
That sounds very inviting, Art. I'm interested in how you would like people to interact with this material. Do you have some thoughts on how they might use the videos, what you'd like to do it as a self-study with a group of people? How can people engage with this and with you around this ministry?
The answer is yes. Um, Lots of ways. In the book, I work people through this, and also in the videos, I will work people through naming their fears, naming how they deal with their fears, either through denying them for as long as they can, or creating expectations that something will fix them. And I'm going to work through in the book. It's a workbook, so I'm going to invite people to say, okay, what negative expectations have people laid upon you, and how did you deal with them, and how did that make you feel? The result will be that you will find that you feel came out in a place of either anger or blame or guilt or shame, and there's a toxic atmosphere that comes out of that when a whole group of people does it together. My book and the videos will step by step take you through how you move through your fears, how you react to them, how you move out of them, how you finally let them go and transform them into hope, and then how you learn how to make decisions together in ways that create abundance. But it's a step-by-step process in the book, which will be a workbook. I won't be doing the work, you will. I'll ask you questions, you'll answer them to the best of your ability, and that will be the same in the videos. Probably a whole set of videos, so that I'll leave you with a question or two, and you can take your time answering, just as you will in the workbook. And then the next video will be carrying on from that, asking you a different question. And ultimately, we'll get to a place where we play together.
Thank you for this introduction. What would be the question you would like to leave people with from this introduction?
Looking at your life now or in the past, because some people have had very difficult pasts, what has been or is now your greatest fear? And when you can tell me that, I can give you some help with how to deal with it and transform it so that it doesn't oppress you in the future.
Okay. And you mentioned that you'd been doing this ministry for decades, and you felt a special motivation, though, to share this work through the workbook, through videos, and so on at this point in time. Can you speak a little bit about what it is that you see in your ministry speaking to the needs of this moment?
I'm very aware of how culture has changed in the last 40 years. I used to work in Congress and give members of Congress advice, parliamentary advice, on how to outmaneuver each other to win. And in my spiritual conversion, I realized that is not a very helpful way for people to be together. So it's out of that experience that I developed what later became a ministry. Now I have to laugh at myself because I've forgotten your question.
Well, with Black Lives Matter, anti-racism efforts that are underway, how do you feel that this work that you've been doing for decades has a special message for now?
Well, I realized that it did even before the Black Lives Matter current movement and before the coronavirus, because of, I think it's particularly the politics in Washington and around the country. There's so much polarization. Even families can't talk to each other around a Thanksgiving dinner table. Something really needed to be done about that. And then we get the period since 2016 where Our president is contributing to toxicity, in my opinion, and other people are contributing right back. And we get Pelosi versus Trump, etc. And everything is just getting worse politically. And then we get the coronavirus, which separates us further. It can bring us together, that's what I hope, but it is initially separating us. We can't be with the people we enjoy being with without using Zoom. So we've got coronavirus, and that creates lots more fear. So we've got fear of each other politically. We've got fear of being around each other because we might die. And we've got a third pandemic, which is the destruction of the environment and all the fear that that's creating, all the tornadoes, all the floods, all the arid land that people are having to migrate out of. There's just around the world and in this country, these three basically sets of fears that all are coming together at once. And it's time to deal with. I mean, actually, this is an invitation for me because they are all coming together. It's so clear. Nobody now can deny that fear is all around us, even if some people like to deny it, but they can't now. And so this seems like the perfect time for me to just jump right in and try to deal with as many of those as I can and show people how to deal with whatever ones they want to deal with. So this is an invitation to me. It's a horrible time, but for me it's an invitation.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for people to kind of come as they are with whatever fears they've had or have.
Whatever.
And to bring them forward. And what you're offering is through your writing and then through these videos and maybe some interaction with your audience if they choose to ask you questions or give you feedback, to find ways that they can deal with those for themselves and with other people.
And one of the really interesting things I think is going to come out of this is that, many of the dislikes and fears now are around race and nationality, sexuality, etc. My experience as a white person is going to be so different from the experience of a black person who, as a kid, from age 1 or age 2, is cautioned about what might happen to them if they go out on the street. And around here now, it's the same for Latinos who are afraid of ICE. And so our church, for instance, is driving people to pick up food because they're afraid of ICE. So there are going to be so many different cultural fears. But what we're going to find out is that they overlap. Especially communities of color, minority colors are going to find out they have a lot in common, and we're finding that out at rallies now. And of course, white people have their own fears, but they're different fears. Although I too have been attacked racially, physically, it's not a major fear of mine. But we're just going to find lots of different fears, but we're going to find that at their heart, they have the same thing in common. And that's going to be very healing.
So what is at the heart of it as you see it?
At the heart of
those fears, at the heart of the way to transform from those fears?
I mean, there's just so many fears. There are always fears of, will I make it professionally? Will I make my family proud of me? That kind of thing. But then there's the physical fears of, am I safe if I leave my house? Is it safe to go to the grocery? Very different kinds of fears. And I'm not saying that those fears ever go away. I'm saying that with my work, I can help people not be governed by those fears, but find creative ways of transforming them into sort of opportunities to work with other people, cooperate with other people, to find some kind of abundance in shared experience and in helping each other. And I think that's really a great invitation right now.
Okay. Can you give people who are listening to this introduction a little bit of a taste and illustration of what some of those approaches are that you'll be sharing in later sessions?
Well, some people, in fact, I think probably most people start life feeling terror because they don't know what life is going to be like. It's an unknown. That's why babies cry when they come out of the womb. For a lot of kids right now, for instance, at the border, when they've been separated from their parents, they may never lose that terror because they may never feel love and nurture. Most people don't have to go through that. But everybody goes through, very soon, fear. Even if they live in a loving family is going to teach them do's and don'ts, and they're going to feel judged if they don't do the do's. So they're going to feel judged, and they're going to feel fear of that judgment, even if they have loving parents. Many people don't have those. So I'm going to help people work through how they deal with those fears. Do they deny them? Say, I'm really not afraid, I'm okay? Or do they think, okay, if I do this, I'll be okay? Or here's a teacher who's going to make me feel proud of myself, so I'll latch onto that person. Do they find somebody who's going to fix them? Or do they feel like I'll never be okay? Do they get into negative expectations about themselves? So they're positive ones, negative ones. I'm going to help people learn how to deal with I'm going to help people figure out how their approach worked for them and how it didn't work for them, and find different approaches that would work better. It's not helpful to remain in denial. It's not helpful to remain in an expectation that something will fix you, because ultimately nothing will. That's not a hope. It's an expectation. I'm going to help people move out of expectations, which are fix-its, into, why am I alive? What's my basic hope for abundance? What would that look like? And usually that's best done in community with people whom you love, who can help you image your hopes and help you find ways to move toward them. And not be stuck in oughts and shoulds and denial, but in moving forward progressively into fun ways of expressing yourself and creating beautiful things together.
Wow, that sounds very inviting. So this has been a very helpful introduction. And what do you intend to offer next in your next segment?
I think that in the next segment, I probably need to get people in touch with what the topography of healing looks like, and I have that in what I call a mandala, which is a spiritual journey of the world. This is a 14 by 14 foot painting, which hundreds of people have participated in, starting with the fears and moving through into the hopes. And I think the next thing to do is for me to do a video walking around it, if on the video segment of this. In the book segment, I write about it. I write about what it would feel like to be in this fear place, or that fear place, or the other fear place, and then so I'm going to do the same thing in the book as I do in the videos. Book is a workbook. The videos will be basically work or play videos. If people like the mandala idea, which is a series of concentric circles moving from terror to fear to denial to expectation to anger, blame, guilt, and shame, which are the result ultimately of expectations, to a sense of grief because all of this hasn't worked out and you've lost lots of friends and your dreams haven't turned out. The next circle being one of trust, finding a way to build a new trust. And then moving from the feeling of fear into the energy of hope. And there is a way of helping people do that. And then discerning their hopes. And then learning how to make decisions in ways that bring those hopes about. So I'm going to do it step by step on the mandala. I'm going to do it step by step in the book and in the videos. So there'll be a number of videos, and there's only 5 chapters of the book, but there are a lot of questions in there. So there'll be more than 5 stopping points.
Great. So you're going to begin with what are the fears that people have so they can understand those, deal with them, process them, if you will, and then find the tools that will help them personally and as a community or as a family or whatever unit to have a positive way that they can transform those fears into, while not denying them, transform them into a hopeful energy that can enable them to move forward, and you'll have concrete tools for how to do that.
Mm-hmm. I'm transforming oughts and shoulds, oughtn'ts and shouldn'ts into invitations. It's a very different way of thinking. Problem versus invitation. That's part of the transformation between fear and hope.
Okay. And I can just say that having experienced this teaching with you, it is a hugely different way to go through life, and a very freeing and God-inspired way to be. And I thank you for that.
Well, I think that this is what God calls us to. I will say that I hesitate to say I'm a Christian because I think every religion has so many problems. But I am a follower of the Jesus path, which is also the path of many prophets and other religious traditions. And so I am God-centered, but one does not have to be God-centered to do these exercises.
And how does following the Jesus path help you in this work you're doing?
Well, I personally always start with a prayer. I don't share it with other people necessarily, but on the mandala, which I've described, it is bisected by the cross, because Jesus and every other person of faith or not faith is in every one of these places, sometimes several times a day. Fear, denial, expectation, anger, blame. We all move through all of these places daily. It's not just this is not a one-time cure. This is a lifetime journey of transformation. And my last chapter in the book is going to be the last several years when we adopted a Latino young man who has lived with very different culture and expectations than we have. And the experience of all of this is about unconditional love. It's developing unconditional love. And how do you do that? When you still have these embedded expectations of life should look like this, we should eat dinner together, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been such a blessing for me to live with people with different cultures and learn, mine isn't any better than theirs isn't any better than mine. We can have fun with this. And we could just let the expectations go and laugh about them. So living, once you get to the place of living together in cooperative community and unconditional love, it's a different set of experiences, but you still have to deal with the old stuff. over and over again, but you've learned how to do it. So like I learned years ago, if I have an expectation of my son that has not been met, I have to realize that's probably at least as much my issue as his, and I will not go to bed angry. I will not let the sun set on my anger. So I have to deal with letting go of my expectation and telling him, probably in a text, that my anger at him came out of my love for him. My thinking that it was good for him to do things my way, and then I realized, oh, well, that's just my take on it. And that's inappropriate. And almost always the next day he'll come back with the following text saying, I was angry at you for the same reason. I thought you should do things my way. And we can laugh about it. So that's the final chapter of the book, and that'll probably be the final set of videos about maybe doing it with him and my wife. What an experience it's been.
So this is a continuing invitation to transformation. It's not a one and done thing. It's life skills that we learn and respond to what the Spirit's calling us to do in the circumstance and issues that we continue to address, but we address in hopefully more healthy ways.
Day by day, it's an approach that you have to use day by day until it becomes a habit. And it's going to differ every day because you're going to be with different people with whom you have a different past, and so you're going to have to deal with that. Or you're dealing with a different part of your life, a different job or something, and you're going to have to. So it's a way of living that contradicts and hopefully replaces all the addictive ways of living that we have developed that are based on a frail ego that is seeking power and control. This is letting go of the need for power and control and experiencing grace and love. And it's a progressive movement. I'll never be done with it in this life, but I'm a lot better than I was.
Okay, well, thank you. I know you said you wanted to make this accessible to people of all faith traditions and perspectives. Yes. Would you be willing to offer from your tradition or perspective, or however you wish, a closing prayer for this session?
Well, I believe that God, whatever you want to call God, and if you remember, God revealed God's self to Moses as I am who I am, did not give a name. So I think a lot of faith traditions, we all really have the same God, but by a different name. I think of God as the householder, the one who builds the household that we all live in, the human community, the earth, the environment. And God wants us to honor each other and honor it, and in the process honor God, because we're all part of God's body. And so my prayer is that through this ministry this will happen.
Thank you very much, Art.